Wind the clock back to 1967. I'm a college student about to get drafted, and I'm working my last summer job at a place called Electrocraft. It's a stereo store, for lack of a better term. They were arch rivals with what was then called Magnolia Camera and Hi-Fi. And indeed, they had a store in Magnolia. And so I was down in the warehouse area, down in the basement, and I met Greg there. He was looking for some Altec components, and he ended up buying, what was it, an 811?
802, 811,
and a
416
woofer. And so that's where we met. And Greg was building guitar amps. I was trying to build guitar amps.
Actually, I was thinking about making guitar amplifiers. I thought you were the competitor.
And then, I don't know, a few years later, I was working at a music store, and Greg had managed to secure a contract with them to build sound columns. And so one day we needed some, and I got nominated to go pick them up at the factory, as it were, which turned out to be the house in Mukilteo.
You picked them up?
I picked them up. That's why I went up to Mukilteo that day. Of course, it took all day to get.
Find the
Once
place.
I got there,
Yeah.
we sat and jawed for the rest of the day, and very little work got done. Anyway, and about that time, you were working on the 6000, I think, or what was about to be the 6000. And you have to appreciate that at that time, if you were a rock and roll band, there were very few choices. Everybody wanted to have an Altec mixer, but not everybody could afford them. And they were hard to get because they were sold through an old boy network. And you certainly couldn't go to your average music store and say, I want an Altec 1567, and that's all I'll take. Instead, you had to wade through all the crap that was sold by all the guitar amp companies, the Tremors, the Suns, the Vocal Smashers. Everybody remember the Vocal Smasher? Okay. There was the Shure M67, which was barely okay, and the Shure M68, which was not okay, but got sold. People still use the M68 today if they play harp. It makes a great predistorter. And so Greg had this idea to make a mixer aimed specifically at rock and roll bands, and that's what became the 6000. So anyway, I think I should stop talking and I should hand the mic over to Greg. So now that you have a little bit of background, I'll turn it over to Greg. So
okay.
tell us about the 6000.
Okay, is this kind of muffled sounding, or is it okay? Okay. If I mumble, tell me. If I'm not announcing, just say, slow down or whatever. But Rick's been talking to me about hosting this for about 2 months or so. And one of my questions is, why would you want me to? What do I have to offer? So Rick said that one of the things I could do is talk about some of the history, and some of it's pretty interesting, some of it's pretty funny, a lot of it's pretty silly. I think back working with you, Bob, back that many years ago, and how little we knew as manufacturers. I mean, we were so naive back then. So of course, not like we know everything now, but the 6000. Back, I want to tell one story first. Bob will deny this story, but I'll stick to this being a true story. I stopped by Tapco. It was after I had left Tapco, and I was in service, and somebody said a mixer had come back for service, and they'd opened the bottom up, and they'd found a rotten sandwich inside of it, and that's why the mixer stopped working. Okay, I was told that when I was at Tapco. Okay, a few years later, I'm in Chicago. I'm at this Playboy Club that's doing a band thing for the CES show. I'm talking to the sound guy a little bit, and he's having some problems with his mixer, and somehow Tapco came up, and he says, "Oh, you know about Tapco?" I said, "Yeah, I started Tapco." And he looked at me kind of funny and said, "I got the strangest story for you. I used to have this Tapco mixer, and it stopped working. And I sent it back for service, and they found it had a sandwich inside of it." Now, he told me this. It's independent from anything, Bob. Ham sandwich. I don't know. Who knows? But it sounds about, the mixer was open. It's lunchtime. Put the sandwich down. Put the bottom on. Ship it out. Maybe it was Russ Ringer. We'll blame it on Russ. Anyhow, yeah, I met Rick Chinn back in '67, and it was in the basement of Electrocraft. Electrocraft was kind of the coolest store around for anybody that was naughty. It was where the hi-fi was. It was where the bigger hi-fi like the Altec was, and it was the center of it in Seattle. And I went there.
Lo-fi.
Huh?
They didn't sell lo-fi.
No, that was hi-fi back then, Altec, and yeah, I just bought. I think I had this woofer in my hand, the Altec horn in my hand. I was walking out and ran into you, and you said something about, what am I doing, whatever. But that was my hi-fi, and yeah, that's a while back. So that was in the Army for a while. I worked at Boeing's first, and I volunteered for the draft to get that over with because I knew I always wanted to have a company. I always knew I wanted to manufacture, and probably part of that's because I knew nobody would ever hire me. So I figured I better figure out how to make some money somehow. So that was kind of the bent I always had. But I started TAP with Martin Snyder, who was my boyhood friend, a wonderful guy, put up with me for a long time, and we started out making guitar amplifiers, speakers, PA speakers, all kinds of wacky stuff. The average design time for a product was maybe hit the kitchen table, get the typing paper out, design a product in maybe 7 days and get it out, and that's about how we did stuff. And we lived in an old hippie house in Mukilteo. The house lasted until about 3 years ago. Hadn't changed at all, but we were a couple of hippies rolling around in a hippie house making guitar amplifiers and whatever we could do to make any kind of money. And towards the end of running the house you saw, towards the end of having that house, the realtor came to us and said, "Tell you what, I'll give you last month rent free if you'll burn the house down for us." We thought about it, but didn't think that'd be appropriate, So that was the old Tapco house down in Mukilteo. The first mixers came about because of we were selling PA speakers. We made some really terrible amplifiers. And the bands that had the products would use vocal masters, which would mostly overload and distort, or M67s, which would overload because the mic pre's didn't have enough input level overload capability. It was probably about 100 millivolts, something like that, pretty low.
Yeah.
And so one day I said, "Well, Martin, we need a mixer. We can't buy them anywhere else, so let's make a mixer. I'll tell you what, I'll go design it. It'll take me about 7 weeks. I'll have a mixer design." And that was I started June, something like that. It was snowing by the time I got something working. Took 7 months later, and the problem was designing a variable gain mic preamp was difficult. Nobody had ever done it back then. And I'm not an electronic engineer, so I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And so I just hammered at it forever. I met a person named Roger Rosenbaum, a real engineer, who helped out for months and months and months. But the original Tapco mixer, the attribute it had, the main attribute was, if you turn the knob down to 3, you could put about a volt into it, so it wouldn't overload. So it took off and became very successful because it was the first rock and roll mixer that didn't overload. And paid the bills, and we could buy wheat thins again. It's about what it meant. I mean, back then, if you bought a pizza, that was really going out and spending the money. But before that mixer came out, I had met Bob Carver. And I met Bob Carver because a friend of his named Brian Morrison was working in a studio in San Mateo, California called Pacific Recording. And he was recording the Abraxas album. And I spent the whole day down there to learn about recording studios. And he told me about this phenomenal phase linear amplifier, phase linear 700. And he said, when you go back up to Seattle, you got to go see these guys. Go see Bob and Steve Johnston, Bob Carver, Steve Johnston. So we got back, we went and saw them, and they had kind of their own hippie house in Richmond Beach, and we went in there and met them, and they befriended us, which was really nice. Bob had his company about probably 2 years ahead of my company. What Bob had figured out was Bob's a real entrepreneur. And I owe a lot to Bob. I mean, he was the person that showed me that you can have a little company, you can do a product and get it going and actually make a product, make some money, pay for the typewriting paper, pay for the bills, and make a company actually function. And so he befriended Martin and I, and we kind of helped each other out doing various things. We do tasks at their factory, and so we watched them grow, and their production line would be maybe, as I recall, if they did an amplifier in a day, that'd be a big production run. And you figure you got 3 employees, a phase 700, they paid the bills. And they got going. They needed to move out of their house they found a place in Edmonds, 405 Halloway. And so Bob asked Martin and I if we'd help move their factory, and in turn he would design us an amplifier. And so we said, sure, we'll do it. So we took our Econoline van down there and took about 3 trips and moved their factory to 405 Halloway, which turned into the first large phase linear factory. And phase linear became very successful. Their sales went up to, I think, $10 million a year, which is a lot of dollars back at that point. And eventually they moved out, and I got a phone call from Don Pruitt, who was their general manager, offering to give us the factory. And we had a factory in Payne Field that was about 7,000 square feet, that was 5 cents a foot, that was worthless, but I thought it was pretty cool. I thought, nah, we don't need that. And I thought about it for about 10 minutes. I thought, wait a second. And I called them back and said, we'll take it. And so that became the first reasonable TAPCO factory, was where phase linear used to be.
What year was it? 74.
Good. Is that what it was? There was one night, I don't know how much time you want me to go on with this, but we're in the back room in engineering. We're phase linear had engineering in the back corner, and that's where TAPCO had engineering. We were back there working on a power supply. I was with Roger Rosenbaum one night, and we needed a resistor, and Roger's going like this. And he looks up, sees something in the roof, and he goes, pulls it out, plucks this thing out of the roof. It was a 2-watt resistor. It was about a 10 ohm resistor, which we needed for a power supply. That's where we got some of our parts, because the engineers at phase linear would take the resistors and they spin them like that. They stick them in the roof. So.
I pulled all those out when we moved out of there.
Huh?
I pulled all those out when we moved
Oh, TAPCO? Yeah.
So the other piece that's missing here is that particular, factory? Yeah, was in the basement of a grocery store. And so break time, you just go upstairs to the grocery store. And, it's way better than having the roach coach show up. Maybe even healthy if you wanted. The coin of the realm then was Twinkies.
Yep.
And so some wise guy took a Twinkie and nailed it to the wall.
Hot melt.
Oh, it was hot melt?
Yep.
Okay. And it sat there for 2 years, 3 years?
4 or 5 years.
And it
I went back and checked.
It never changed color. It didn't get hard. I haven't eaten a Twinkie since.
Yeah. I went back, when I started audio control, I looked at that to rent it, so I went back there. I thought, I went back to the back, and the Twinkie was still on the wall. And it looked perfect, and it was hard as a rock. But just to give you a sense of what TAPCO was like, there was a guy named Russ Ringer that worked there. And on any of these mixers, you've got finished nuts, or finished washers. Let me get this all screwed up. You've got finished washers and the nuts right here. And I go over to production where Russ Ringer is sitting there. He's got 2 bin boxes. And what he's got is finished washers and Swedish nuts. That's the kind of humor was there. It was. So anyhow, we moved. First, we moved phase linear to that location. We stayed at Muckletee at that point. Over time, after I met Bob Carver, I learned a little bit about entrepreneurship. And the thing I learned was, instead of making a guitar amplifier every week or a speaker every 3 days or whatever, to slow down a little bit and figure out one product and get focused on that, and get that one product out to get a company going and get cash flow going and have some income so you can actually have a company. That's one thing I owe Bob Carver. And that became this mixer right here, which I'll pass around the room. This is number 1, the first one we ever made. A fine person named Brian Ozzie gave this to me as a gift when Electro Voice moved TAPCO back to, where was
Buchanan.
it? Buchanan?
Michigan.
Pardon?
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
This got sent back to service prior to that, and somebody noticed the serial number was 1001, and they kind of thought that was kind of odd, and they realized it was really old, so they offered the band a brand new one, which the band took, and we got this one. Brian held onto this for probably 4 or 5, 6 years or so, and when they moved, he gave me a call. I went over to his house and gave this to me, so it's one of my favorite things I have. But it's the first one I made. This started out as a prototype, and to conserve money, the prototype, obviously, you want to sell the prototype whenever you can. Hopefully it'll work for a while. So this actually was a prototype. I got several places where I changed the IC inside and crossed it off, and it's got different dates. But this was, we actually made 38 of them like this, all hand wired. And then Martin made the next 40 or so because I couldn't because I talked him into it. And so I'll pass this around the room. This is, if you look at it, you'll see things like the input resistor right here has got another resistor in parallel. That's when we discovered that if we had a smaller value resistor, it actually operate with a low impedance microphone, which wasn't the original design, but it kind of happened anyhow. And you'll see the resistors around the transistors. Sometimes they've got one, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's three in series. Sometimes it's two or three in series parallel. And that's because the topography of the preamp wasn't set right. It didn't have current feedback didn't have DC feedback. So we had to hand tweak the zero spot for each mic preamp. So we had to have a scope and readjust it to center the voltage on the mic preamp. So that was kind of time consuming, to say the least. So I'll pass this around. You can take a look at this.
Remember who made metalwork?
Pardon?
Remember who made metalwork on the original one? Was that?
Oh, Okerberg, yeah. The guy who did the metalwork was, he made mostly ductwork for houses and buildings. You know, if you went there and they want to check out tolerance of a chassis, you'd pull out his tape measure. These days it's a caliper that long, but he was a great guy. He'd forget to bill you for months and months, which was helpful. So that's number one. When we ended up, when this thing came out, all we're looking for is to pay the bills and get food in our mouths and exist. And it took off like that. Just all of a sudden, we had all these bands driving down to Mukilteo, Washington, wanting to buy this mixer. I think we sold it for like $147.40, some crazy price. And it cost us, I think, $22 in parts, and labor was free because we were free. And so that was the start of actually making some money. We could pay rent, and before that, it was always day to day, wondering if you're going to be able to pay the rent or have to burn the house down. But so that's the first Tapco mixer.
We're talking about pots.
This one is goo free.
What's pot goo?
The pots back when these were made, the pots were made by CTS. The pots, they're American-made pots. They were really wobbly, and a product's feel or product's quality image is more on the outside than inside. The way the pots feel, the way switches feel, the way the paint feels, the heft, all those things. The sum total of all that is the first thing a consumer feels the quality is. The inside can be good or bad. Doesn't matter for the first kind of feel. So I realized early on that the pots on all the MI products, when Rick was telling us about the old mixers back then, I was just cringing because of how much was custom with the K. There was so much garbage back there. I mean, so many horrible products, made by amateurs like myself. And so the CTS pots always felt terrible, so we decided we wanted to have some kind of a goo in the bushing to make them feel better. So Roger Rosenbaum, our engineer, was a hobby boy chemist, part-time. And so he developed this goo. What you do is you take this goo and put it on the bushing and on the bushing and the shaft and make it feel better. So the pots for these were all taken apart one by one by hand, and you put the goo in the shaft and reassemble it and recrimp it, and that's how we got the first pots to feel really good.
You searched all over for the goo.
We never could find it. We didn't know. There was no internet back then.
Yeah.
We couldn't find the goo. So Roger,
Did you try raisin juice?
Raisin goo was about the closest thing to it. And Roger decided that we needed to have long molecule thick, some kind of a long molecule thick compound of some sort. So, and Roger worked on that for months and months, and finally got a compound that would work that we could use. And so we took them apart, and for months and months we took them apart, the pots one by one, reassembled it, made the mixers out of it, and we did the final test. We didn't believe in board testing. I mean, we really didn't know what we were doing. So we built the whole product up, then we tested it up. And the problem was the goo was real stringy. So when you disassemble or when you assemble the pot, if you take and the way you move your hand away from it, you can have a microscopic piece of goo across the element, it would have a tick sound. So we'd manufacture the mixer, then we'd test it, then we'd remanufacture it again. So my dad came in one day and said, "Why don't you just figure out a way to blow the goo into the shaft?" I thought, that makes a lot of sense. He said, "Why don't you just figure out some way to press it in?" So I started using compressors and actually made it work. Then it got developed into the use heat. So if you took the pots, put a ring of goo around the top of the bushing, put it in an oven, from capillary action would suck into the bushing. It was perfect for a while. The only problem was that when we had CTS pots that had brass bushings and nylon shafts, or worse than that, brass bushings and aluminum shafts, After about 3 years, the goo would turn green, would corrode, and the pots would stop turning. So for all of you who've got Tapco mixers you can't turn the pots, it's my fault. I'm sorry.
Now, I do have a small vial of gooth in it, and that'll fix it for a while.
Jory Fink still has some too.
Yeah.
So do I.
And
You serious?
Dibutyl phthalate, you can buy it.
yeah.
A gallon a time or something. Is that something legal though?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think you can turn it into anything useful.
Did it interact chemically with the like the contacts or anything like that?
No, but it kind of dissolved the shaft.
Yeah.
And it tended to glue the knobs onto the shaft also.
Oh yeah, the solvent of that would the knobs were ABS, so the knobs get glued to the shaft, so you couldn't take the knobs off to repair the unit. So it was pretty bad. But then there was a time we had stacks. When you manufacture, you should manufacture in a line, like one at a time on a production line, so you don't have a lot of products in production that are wrong. But we're serious believers in batch manufacturers. So you make a big pile of something and then test it and make another big pile of something. And we had, must have been probably 200 or 300, 6,000 RCFs, the bigger mixer. Had them all built up and they're piled up and they were turning pink on us. And what happened is the anodizer, which was another manufacturer in Edmonds that wasn't very good, had used the wrong chemistry and had to clean it up so that anodized turned pink because of if you touch it, it turned pink, and just from air would turn pink. So we had all these mixers built up, so we found that we took Pledge. Remember that, Bobby? We took Pledge and spray it with Pledge and put Pledge on the anodizer. You can make it look okay and we could ship them. But it was...
Oh, and a barbecue fork, two-pronged barbecue fork is what you use to pull pot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or the tire, it was a nail puller, wasn't it? Somebody took a nail puller and modified it. Yeah.
So Tapco grew pretty rapidly. It turned into a multi-million-dollar success, which was my first success in my life. I was pretty amazed by it, and we were all amazed by it. He got up to about $7 million of sales per year, and the profitability was about 18%. So it was real successful, even though most of us didn't know what the hell we were doing. But that was back in an industry that was even more forgiving than it's been in the past 10 years or so. And I stayed with the company until, let's see, 76 or so. And I sold part of my stock, $20,000 worth, to start my second company, Audio Control. So I had a slight disagreement with my other partners. And unfortunately, about a year later, it was essentially out of business due to bad business decisions, had to do with some product decisions. Yeah, it was unfortunate, but it was a bad one. But anyhow, I'd already started Audio Control, and it was already taking off, and it was doing well, so I was in pretty good shape. Tapco got sold. I got some cash for that, dumped that in Audio Control, and kept on moving. Audio Control started in my house with in a carport. Like I say, it was $20,000 what I had to work with total. And $20,000 meant rebuild the carport, design the product, pay the mortgage, pay the bills, buy parts, everything. I don't know, somehow, when you're really poor, somehow you make it work somehow. We made it work. And Audio Control was about a year and a half old by the time that Tapco got sold. And so we grew Audio Control. Audio Control was a little, how many of you know who Audio Control is?
What was the first product you wanted?
First product was a 520. Took 7 weeks to go from concept to production because we used crummy parts and used whatever was available fast. But it was a little speaker equalizer, little guy like this, guy like this guy right here. Pretty handsome, huh? Chunks of wood on the end. Oh man.
Well, I thought what you did for the pots was clever.
Oh, the pots. Pots were my life. The pots. These pots. When I left.
More to that than you know.
When I left Tapco, I decided I didn't want to ever see a mixer again in my life. I didn't want to ever see a pot again in my life because pots were the bane of manufacturing. It was just pots were always the problem. They're made by CTS. They're made in Texas and Mexico, and they were awful. It was like the last thing you ever want to make again is a mixer which is highly labor intensive, using parts that a lot of times aren't very high quality. This was before we did Tapco mixers. This was our first product. That's actually our second. We had an anyhow, this was our first product that we were going to mass produce. And there was the biggest store in the Northwest at that time was Bandstand Music, Gary Gonder's Bandstand Music. And Martin and I decided we wanted to make some larger quantity things. So Gary asked us if we could make a sound column and make a lot of them. So we developed this thing with 3 eminent speakers, a PA-30 horn. And if you see a PA-30 horn now, they still make them for paging, you'll see it's got 4 holes in there. Those 4 holes were put in the die because we wanted that for this product right here. Anyhow, we got a contract to make, I think, 300 of these, and the price was $67 each. Gary would give us he paid for the 12-inch speakers and the horn. We paid for the cabinet and everything else.
That's why I went up there. I was delivering speakers to you.
Oh, okay, from his warehouse. Yeah. We thought for $67 we were going to get rich. So the gross profit would have been, nothing, $1. But anyhow, the pots in this, because I didn't have any time to wait for lead time for potentiometers from Alps or anybody like that, I use CTS pots, trim pots that are off the shelf. And we glued nylon shafts to the, actually we had snap-in shafts that went into the pot, then we had machine knobs that would go onto that. We glued those on with epoxy. And that was the way to get something in production really fast. But this was a little speaker equalizer that had 3 bass controls, a wide mid-range control, and one for the high end. And it had a subsonic filter, which was its major claim to fame, I think. But we sold thousands of these things. But anyhow, this is
And they were cheap.
was it $119 retail,
Yeah.
$58 wholesale. Parts cost was $19, and labor was still free.
How many employees at that time?
Huh?
How many employees in that?
In the garage, we had the maximum we had was 5, I think. It was nice. We had 600 square feet. We had the inventory right here. We had a stuffing rack, a solder pot, touch-up, wood staining, final test, mechanical assembly, screening. Screening was an area about this big. So it was one of the funner times of my life where you can just have have a little factory in a garage.
So what did you guys use when you would bring in, say, Jafco or some of those companies, to show the product? Where was that done?
They never saw us. They'd
Oh, it must have been the manufacturer reps or something.
oh yeah, the reps did everything. Yeah. So we got this thing going, and it was our first product, and we were just hoping to pay the bills, and it took off. We did about we got to about $1,500 a month, not in the house, but that was our next move to the factory. So we stayed in the house for about a year. It got to the point where you get tired of having your employees have breakfast with you on in your kitchen every day, which was fun for a while, but it wasn't so much fun. Anyhow, am I losing anybody here? So that's the beginning of audio control. So that was the first product. Then we moved to a little factory in Edmonds, or Malik Terrace actually, and grew the company. It actually did real well in the first few years. We got up to about 45 employees. It made decent money for about 3 years. And then the economy slowed down. Interest rates got up to 19% and 1980. And in the hi-fi industry, because Japanese had come into the market so heavily, it got to be, there's a term called net never. And what happened was hi-fi manufacturers in Japan wanted to keep sustaining their factories. And so they gave terms to the dealers that were net never or whatever, and we couldn't do that. So the business environment for small companies became very, very tough. And if I would have been better at business, I probably would have done a better job, but I didn't. But it was a fun company. We had a lot of good times. Some of us probably should have gone to prison, but it was a lot of fun there. Did well for a number of years. Finally ended up, it did a number of products. One of its more famous products was the C101, which was an equalizer with an analyzer. It did real well. We sold about 300 a month of that, profitable. And finally, after the point where it was losing some money and the bank was there, they had us in a thing called special credits, which is where they have, it's like you're the, it's like, well, special credits is where they're looking at you like a hawk, and you better start paying down your loan or they're going to shut you down. So we went through that for about 2 years, and we got turned around and we got so it broke even. But I got to the point where I really liked pro audio. Hi-fi wasn't really where my heart was. The hi-fi was okay, but about that point, rack systems were starting to happen. The audiophile portion of audio that had anything to do with equalizers was going away. The beginning of audio control, equalizers were a hot item, but by the time that, by 1980 or so, Audiophiles didn't like equalizers for good reason, I think. Rack systems came in, and just the business environment really got kind of poor for us. So we developed the auto sound. And the first product we did was the EQX, which is a little kind of bolt down to your car, input-output level adjust equalization. That was kind of from my pro audio background at TAPCO, a concept where I thought you could re-equalize a car. It did pretty well. That was kind of the end of my array at audio control. And so I was able to sell the company, and what was that? Get my glasses.
The SA3050 done
Pardon?
after you, was the SA3050 analyzer done after you left?
Yeah, that was after I sold the company.
Who's your concept?
Pardon?
Who's your product?
Yeah, I'd always, we talked about that at TAPCO days. We always wanted to do a spectrum analyzer because what was out there was very expensive. The Ivy was a very good product, but it was really expensive. So I always wanted to, thought it'd be cool to have a third octave spectrum analyzer of decent quality. So
Well, we almost did one there.
I think
Yeah,
I was,
it was
oh yeah,
the code name
Twinkie.
was Twinkie.
I've got this.
But it was too little for too much. It was only octave band. And even then, third octave was where it was at.
And audio control got up to about $3.5 million a year when I was there, 45 employees, which is a lot of employees for that kind of dollars. But it was a fun company. Sold it to Tom Walker. To this day, he's done a very good job keeping the company going, which I certainly I appreciate myself. I'm glad he's done as well as he has with the company. I stayed there for about a year and a half after I sold the company. We did a whole pile of products. The spectrum analyzer was the main thing that I worked on. I was pretty proud of that product. We did a pretty good job, but it was a tough product because it had twin tune filters with what, 2% capacitors, and it wasn't digital. I mean, part was digital, but the filters were all analog, so that's a difficult way to go. And so sold that company, and went to work for, after I worked there for about a year and a half, went to work for Carver, and I stayed there for about a year, which was very interesting. It was my first time being an employee for a number of years, and they probably should have fired me. I had to fire myself, but I worked there for a year. I worked in pro audio products, describing new products, and learned a lot from Carver Corp. I saw a lot of very, very talented people there. It had just gone public. It was doing about $32 million per year, doing quite well. But after about a year, the Carver was really about hi-fi more than pro, even though the pro power amplifiers were doing pretty well. I really got to the point where I really thought that it was time for me to go back into pro audio. And I met a guy named John Sensorino down in California on a tour of AFEX. And he's driving me back to my hotel, and he's asked me what I'm doing. I said, I'm at Carver, and he says, and he was working on testing of people for aptitude of what they should be doing in life. So we started talking about what you do in life, and he started asked me what I'm doing, and I realized that in that moment that it was time to start another company, get back to pro audio. So that was, I came back to Carver that week and resigned and started Mackie.
So speaking of pots, when you left,
okay.
when you left audio control, I think you ended up with a bunch of some production parts that never made it into production, right?
Yeah, there's about
50,000 S-tape per slide pots.
Yeah, there's about 50,000. There were slide pots from equalizers. So it's a 50K W taper pot. And so I thought that it'd make a lot of sense to form a new company using surplus parts, which I would never do again. Not recommended. It was cheap, but not really cheap. The first product, got a brochure somewhere.
There's one out there. I'll go get it.
There it is. And a 16 channel line mixer. These were all these pots. There were 72 pots per unit. They were all the same value. They're all the same parts. That's all I had. So, so I had to design circuits around that value. So I came up with some kind of odd circuitry, kind of some reverse circuitry, to make them work. That we at Mackie used. To this day, we use that circuit. And I think we sold about 200 of them.
One of the things that's strange is the pan pots go up and down.
How are the graphics? The graphics are wrong too. Oh well. Please. Pardon? Yeah, you have a detent for, and that's part of where unity gain came from.
Yeah.
The concept of having a detent center, that's all I had, so you make a click in the middle, so it's unity gain, so it made sense. Yeah, yeah.
In that case, that's probably the most important part anyway.
Well, it's certainly what it turned into. Yeah. It absolutely solved the problem. Where am I supposed to set the knob?
Yeah. So that one was manufactured in my condo. I had a 3-bedroom condo factory. And I had, to start Mackie Designs, I'd saved some money. I had a bunch of studio equipment, and part of which I sold to Rick Chinn here. I think it was about $7,000 worth of microphones
Something like
that I sold to you.
And
And
an
that-
8-track.
Which 8-track was that? The Tascam?
Yeah,
38,
38.
yeah. And so that money was used to get this company going. And so we had a 3-bedroom condo. And we had this in production, a manufacturing bedroom upstairs. I had a bedroom, manufacturing bedroom, shipping bedroom, kitchen. The washroom was a paint booth. The living room was the office. The neighbors thought we were really strange, but they put up with us. And in the beginning of the Mackie mixers, we were looking for, what we did was the pots used, it gets back to pots again. Any kind of a mixer, the pot's one of your biggest cost items. And so what I wanted to do was figure out a way to use very low cost pots, like the TV pots, which nobody had ever done on a pro audio product. Nobody had ever done on a mixer ever. And I saw this pot when I was at Carver, because they were working on TVs, and they had these little Opus pots that cost about 16 cents. Felt terrible. They were just awful. And but they actually had some good things about them. They were sealed. So I'm at my condo, and we're looking at different vendors to make pots. And I think the rep was Gary Woolridge for Panasonic. And so he came out to the house, our factory, to show us some of the pots they had. I had some Alps pots, examples to show them what I was looking for. And they came in, and there were some of the main people from Panasonic, from Japan, that came to see me in my factory. And so they, suits and ties and the whole thing, and they walk in, we sit down in my living room, start talking about these dreams for this new company. And the only reason they took me seriously at all was my history in tap going out of control. But we're sitting there going through the pots and looking at it and all, and the older fellow, he must have been about 60 years old, very dignified, high up in Panasonic, and he looks at me and he says, can we get a factory tour? And I say, sure. So he puts his coat on. Other guys put their coat on. I say, okay, follow me. So we go up the stairway to the bedroom up there. I show him the factory. I said, here's the factory. He sees 2 benches. And he says, where's inventory? I open up the sliding door of the closet. And had all the circuit boards lined up. He kind of looked at me, kind of like, what am I doing here? That was one of the funnier moments. And pardon?
Did you assemble in your sleep?
Huh? No. So that was a fortunate one because Panasonic was the one company that had the most technology going into 9mm rotary pots, and it was lucky for me because we had to have the highest quality pots to be used in the way I was going to use them. The Alps pots were pretty good at that time, but not as good. But all of them are really wobbly. So when I designed the 1604, the idea was to take and have the tolerance in the sheet metal be tight enough so the pots wouldn't wobble, because the pots themselves back then, they wobble. The new ones don't wobble so much, but the old ones would wobble a lot, so they felt terrible. So my cure for that was to take and have the chassis made with very small holes and paint the chassis, and the paint became kind of the bearing surface. But with my history of goo, I figured we need to have goo in this design again. And so we found a company called William F. Nye that actually makes the real goo that people use for camera lenses and that kind of stuff. And so we had in production, we had very tight tolerance holes with the paint and all the rest of them. We had these goo machines where people were sitting there all day long putting dots of goo on the bushing and rotating it back and back. And they felt great, but that was early success. If we hadn't, that was the key to making those mixers at the cost we made them at that time. We could not have done it without those pots. But I was lucky in that it could have fallen in front of my face. The pots might have worn out, but it turned out that the sealed pots that Panasonic were making turned out to be very high quality. It turned out that the reliability of those pots were better than any of the pots I'd ever seen. All the pots in previous years, these were the best, even though they cost 17, 18 cents. They were the best. So that was the essential key in getting this company going, making a product that had high value and high quality at the same time. So where am I anyhow? What year am I at?
We're about, 10 mixers ago.
Yeah. So production of the mixer 1604 didn't start at my condo. We finally moved to a factory in Redmond, about 2,000 square feet. And Chuck Jensen was our first employee twice.
Yeah, and it was a block away from the
Old Tapco factory.
Old Tapco
Yeah.
factory in Redmond.
Yeah.
Were you working for him at that time?
No. No, I don't remember what I was doing.
Nobody else.
What year was that?
Well, I started Mac in 88. I was at Carver at 87, and Solar Control 86, 85, 86. So the condo year probably was 88, 89. So then we were in 1990. We were in the shop in Redmond. So we had Chuck Jensen was doing CAD work, and we had one person doing tech, Jeff Gilbert, doing tech work out in the factory. We couldn't afford heat, so we had a little milk heater in front of him underneath his bench. And that was the very start of the 1604. Of course, I thought it would get in production a lot faster than it did. It took a year longer than I thought, but actually took about a year total, which actually was pretty fast given everything. And we put it in production, and I brought back some people from Tapco days, Corey Rivers, he worked at Tapco, he worked at Audio Control, and I was very fortunate to be able to bring a lot of people in from my previous two companies that believed in me and wanted to support the effort, and they came to the company at a very good time and grew the company. I couldn't have had a better group of people for the time of trying to be an entrepreneur and doing a company from scratch. It was the best people you could have possibly had. And everybody worked very, very hard. Everybody was conscientious, and it was just an amazing experience. I remember we had first production of the mixer we had the first production we were making it, and it hadn't advertised yet. People had bought the mixer, really liked it a lot, but nobody knew they existed. So we were making about $15,000 per month net profit, and I decided to run the company at break even, put all that money into magazine advertising. So, which made the magazines pretty happy from what happened afterwards. But so I took all that money, put it in magazine advertising, and it was a home and studio recording magazine. The sales went from just almost nothing, just like that, skyrocketed. At the point the sales skyrocketed, we were right at the point where we had these tech benches, and they'd get done with the mixer, and they put it in a box, and they put it on the floor in front of them. About the point we couldn't see over the boxes to see our text anymore is when the sales finally took off. So that was 1990.
Was that a Ron Colaha yet?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, Ron Colaha is one of the absolute keys. I met Ron before I left Tapco. The advertising at Tapco gotten so bad. That's part of the reason I left. Is I was just very disturbed about the direction the advertising was going. It was embarrassing. I was at a NAMM trade show, and Hector Latorre and Vinny Testa were the owners of Modern Recording Magazine. And they took me aside, bought me a drink in the middle of the day at NAMM because they wanted to talk to me about Tapco advertising. And they sat down, and Vinny, I don't know if any of you know Vinny. Vinny's a East Coast kind of guy. He's got his rag. And he said, your advertising is so bad. I don't want to put it in my rag. It's just embarrassing me. And I was looking up and said, yeah, it's embarrassing me too. And I made the decision at that point was any company I started again was going to have good advertising from day one. So when I got back and started Audio Control at this point, I called around and looked at who had good advertising. Magnolia Hi-Fi had good advertising, and SpeakerLab had good advertising. He was a SpeakerLab, and he went by the name of Ajax at that point. So I was fortunate enough to strike up a friendship with Ron, and he stuck by me all these years. But Ron is, that's advertising at most advertising that Mackie's done, not all of it. Most of it's been Ron Colaha, and it's been an absolutely essential part of the success of my past two companies. So, company kept on growing. That was 1980, 81, and 89 or so. And what happened after 1990 is the company grew so fast, none of us ever believed. My goal was to have a company again that was the size that the Tapco was, which was about $7 million per year. And we got this thing going. We had moved the factory again. We were next door right here was our factory. And we got this thing going, had the right group of people, had an industry that was behind the company, had some luck. I mean, I've been always fortunate that people have really got behind me. I've had a lot of help from a lot of friends. And somehow just everything lined up. And the company went from $0 to $60 million in six years. We had net profits of about 18%. We grew from our own profitability. It was just an incredible time. But again, it was an industry that got behind us. It was good products. It was good people. It was a combination of everything that gave us the success. But by the time it hit about, it went from 7 to 12 in a period of about 3 months. I didn't even get a chance to even remember. There was a time, our first company party, one of our more fun ones, was next door. I had some investors invest money in the company, and part of the deal was to pay them off in about 2 years or whatever, and there was a percentage of income. And we had our first party was the party where we could celebrate the company was worth nothing, because we had negative net worth. So it was a great party. We all celebrated being worth 0. So we went public in 1995. We went public for a number of reasons. One of my biggest reasons was we had the early people that helped the company succeed. I wanted to have a way to reward them, and stock options were a way to reward them. So we gave out a lot of stock options to the 5 or 6 people that really made the company go in the beginning, and did the public life. We didn't go public because we needed the money. We had money in the bank, but going public was a way to, one, reward the employees we had, but also was a way to have enough money in the bank to have a cushion to be able to run the company by business decision rather than making decisions that you have to do because you don't have money. You're always better off, in my opinion, to have enough money where you're making decisions based on good business sense rather than being forced to make decisions that you really don't want to make. And so we've grown from that. We purchased RCF in 1998. Sales went up to about $102 million. We purchased EAW in 2000, and sales went up to about $207 million. The company has grown, got more complicated, multinational, and here we are.
I'm sure some of you must have questions of your own, and it's probably about time to take a break, yeah? Yes, no, I'm indifferent. So there's the door prize yet to do. There's a bunch of cold sodas in the kitchen, and I think some things to munch on. And we should come back, let's say at 9 o'clock, 15 minutes.
Oh, I brought a bunch of old.
Oh, yes.
Pictures of Cassidy.
Does anybody know this person?
That was my favorite shirt. I've also got, that was back when I was skinny.
Let's see.
And I've also got various brochures from the very beginning of the company, from TAPCO Audio Control and from Mackie Designs here. If you want to take a look.
Somebody's got a question? I'll take this one first because he's closer.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the design of the 16, I think it's the 1604. Yeah, the first one, because the way it felt being a working professional at the time is that there were other small mixers, but they sort of had their niche and you wouldn't take them out of their niche, you know, like I can remember putting a piece of masking tape over a brand to be unnamed and writing Gamble on it to satisfy, you know, a writer. And
Did it work?
it did. The road manager got a good laugh out of it and didn't have time. He was overwhelmed by other compromised variables to, you know, get back to that. But the thing about those boards was when they hit the market, it was the thing where you saw it and you looked it over and you said, I can work with this, you know, in a way that you didn't say with the competition. The same thing. That's how it felt, and I wasn't the only one that felt that way. Obviously, you know, they were selling. So I was wondering if you could talk. You talked about the pots. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the mixer itself and the design.
Any product that I work on, I believe that one of the most important single things. Boy, it sounds muffled. One of the most important single things is that when you walk up to it, that you instantly understand how it operates. And that's good from the viewpoint that the salesman on the floor, if they understand how it operates faster, they're more likely to sell the product also. So from a commercial point of view, it's good to design a product that's easy to understand. But I always spend a lot of time going through it and trying to make the product so you walk up to it, you don't have to, it's obvious how it works. We're not always successful, but we certainly try. The design of the 1604 was, Alesis had come out with their 1622. I knew about that mixer about a year before it came out, and I was scared to death of it because it was, this big and it had 48 million knobs on it, and it was low cost. And a guy came up from Alesis, which I won't say who it was, but told me about the mixer. 1604 started out as a smaller mixer with just one flat panel, and that's what it was going to be. And when I found out about the Alesis mixer, I realized that I better figure out a way to do a much more substantial product. And one of the things I wanted to do was do a product, and the dealer had it, that could either be tabletop or rack mount, multifunctional. And so I started thinking about, how to take a product and have it do more than one thing. And this is a true story here. So I was sitting up one night trying to figure out how to make a product where it can be tabletop or rack mount, or you could have different mechanical configurations, whatever. And I like snowstorms. I just love the snow. I heard there was a snowstorm coming into town. So I stayed up until about 2 that night, trying to think about how to do mechanical design with the cables and how to make it rack mount or tabletop or all the different things you're going to do. And about 5 in the morning, I had my windows open. About 5 in the morning, we had a snowstorm. I woke up with snow on my arm on my bed. Serious. I woke up and I had this idea, and I went downstairs and drew the thing out and made some paper dolls and drew out how the mechanics worked, and I had it. And I knew that when I got that, I knew it was going to be a successful product. Nobody had ever done anything like that. It took care of the issue about, do you want to buy a rack mount product or tabletop, a product that you can buy it and use it one way at one time, and as you change the way you're going to operate the product or use the product, you can change the configuration. So that was one of my better days of my life, just going, knowing that at least I thought, knowing that was going to be successful because of that key thing. When we showed it at NAMM, we showed it at NAMM that summer, I guess, and we had a booth at the bottom back corner of the building, and people would come up and see that. We showed how it rack mounted, tabletop, whatever. People couldn't figure it out, but anyhow, we try really hard to make it so you walk up to a product that makes sense. So everything about the feel, the way the knobs rotate, the way they feel, the way the printing is done, the clarity of the printing. Parallax issues, when you look at knobs versus printing, that you make sure the labeling is on the right side of the knob. Make sure that when you look down a panel, the print's on the side of the knob, not behind the knob. So there's a lot of work that I've always done, a lot of work that engineers at Mackie do to make sure that our products, when you walk up to it, they make some kind of sense. You've seen a lot of products, when you walk up to it, you can't read the print, or things are upside down and backwards, or they don't make any sense. The products will still sell, but my strong belief is the better looking the product is, the more obvious it is how to use the product, and the easier it is for the user to use the product, the more chances are you're going to have a successful product. But it's a total of all those things that make a product really a super good product.
Could you talk about how the purchase of EAW came about? That totally blew my mind when I heard about that.
Okay, we had acquired RCF. RCF is an Italian speaker manufacturer. They were about a $40 million per year company when we acquired them. About half the business was 70 volt install business. About a quarter was rod drivers, OEM, and another quarter was rock and roll stuff they'd sell in Italy and part of Europe. So that was our first acquisition, and we did that because I wanted to get into speakers, and I knew early that I wanted to get into power process speakers. I mean, to me, it was absolutely obvious that in live sound, power process was the way to do it. And I knew that for this company to become a speaker company, the only way to do that would be to do power process. The rod drivers are the central, I think, are the central part of the system. Obviously, system design is the most important thing in a speaker system. But I wanted to be a company where we had our own drivers, where we weren't just buying from somebody else, that we actually had control over the drivers, and we're a real speaker manufacturer like JBL. So after acquiring RCF, EAW was the biggest buyer of RCF drivers. Component drivers, OEM drivers are a fairly profitable business if you do it right. So as time went on, EAW has had and has a big market in public address, install sound, etc., which is the direction we were going anyhow. And it became apparent if we want to keep growing the company as a public company, one of the things you want to do is grow the company, but hopefully you want to have an EPS that follows also for shareholder value. But it became obvious that if we could take what Mackie knew, plus Mackie's digital background that we had gotten over a period of a few years, plus RCF drivers and technology they had, plus EAW, that together, if we hooked it up together and got the people to communicate and use the technologies available, that'd be a very strong combination. We've grown very fast. I can't say it's been easy for us, and I don't think it's easy for any company to acquire other companies and make it work perfect. It doesn't happen that way. So it's taken time to make this work. It's coming together, but it's taken time. But it was part of the plan to grow the company, but it made sense because we had the background in DSP and amplifiers and drivers. Having control over all that would put us in a spot where we could become a bigger company and be successful. And also, from my point of view, I always want to be able to build products, offer products that have a reason to exist. Making Me Too products doesn't make sense to me. What makes sense to me is you go to the product industry in particular, if you go to the industry with something that's really good and you've given the industry something it needs and wants, you get rewarded with sales, you get rewarded with a lot of people that appreciate the products you do. So my view was by having control of the drivers and having the technology EAW has, the brand name, and the engineering talent EAW has, which is enormous. That combination made a lot of sense to us as a way to grow the company.
But did you go to EAW and say you want to sell your company, or did they come to you and say you want to buy it?
EAW had been on the market for a period of time before that.
Yeah, two-part question. One, what can you talk a little bit about the transition from being a analog mixer company into the big daddy you see behind you there, and also why and how the Chihuahua?
The what?
Petey.
The whys and the hows of the Chihuahua?
How did that come about?
How did Petey come about?
Petey was Ron Kolaha's dog. Ron Kolaha is the guy who did most of our advertising, the creative. Ron Kolaha is the guy who made me in particular bigger than life and made the company bigger than life. He helped create the image that we hope we deserve to have. The Chihuahua was his little pet. Petey would come in the door. Petey got hit by a car a few years ago. And after Petey got hit, actually Petey hit the car. After Petey hit the car, after Petey came out of the coma, Petey walked crooked. Couldn't walk straight anymore. And also, in the front office down below, a lot of times you'd see a puddle on the way in. That'd be you know that Ron Kolaha is here by two ways. You'd smell his cigarettes, his the clove cigarettes, and it'd be puddles of water where Petey the dog was. On the digital stuff, after we had gone public, Forbes magazine published an article about Mackie Designs, which we thought was going to be a real nice article. It turned out to be an article that was really made us look really bad, and it really hurt our stock price. And the article basically said that how is Mackie going to keep up with Yamaha and the rest of them in the digital side? And valid question, because all we had for digital at that point was some VCA type products that really are pretty low level. And the good thing about it is it made us mad enough where we acted on it. I had Thanksgiving at my house with some of the engineers and my friends, and we were saying, what are we going to do about this? And so I thought, well, let's design a digital mixer and get it and show it at NAMM. And that was 7 weeks, which is just nuts. But we said, and then the mixer's out there in the hallway, you can see it. We said, I mean, again, when I think it's challenge is a good thing for companies. Challenge is what drives you. It's certainly not just money all the time. It's a challenge of doing what you can't do. In this case, it was doing what you can't, what's impossible. But anyhow, we had been working on a product called the Predator, which was a digital console, something like that, but it was about this big. It was huge. And at the point that we had that article come out, and I got more involved with the design concepts of that, we walked back into it and shrunk it down so it made more sense. And we said, well, we got 7 weeks to go from nothing to showing a digital mixer that actually operated at NAMM. And we almost made it. We did the industrial design, got the plastics molded, all the custom parts, worked around the clock. I mean, I've never seen a group of people work as hard and as fast in my life. I mean, everybody was on it because there was a goal of 7 weeks, and the goal was to be at NAMM. And the goal was to walk into NAMM, and right in front of Yamaha, the digital console and slam it down and say, there it is. And that was my hair was standing on my arms when we walked into NAMM, walked to our booth with it, because it was like, here's Yamaha. I mean, God, here's this huge company. Here's little Mackie Designs walking in with a digital console that was higher tech in a lot of ways than what the O2R was. So this product was originally it took 7 weeks. We actually pulled it off, and it was 7 weeks and like 2 days. We didn't have it operating the first day of NAMM. We worked around the clock. We run this big room, looked like a rock and roll room. And there was about 4 of us staying there working around the clock, around shifts, doing programming, reprogramming the locations of the buttons, getting the power supply to work. And yes, we did take the clock radio apart and use the speaker inside to listen to our computer. I tried to take the TV apart to get some diodes for our power supply in true rock and roll fashion, but the TV was bolted down to the rail, so we couldn't do that. But we were in that room, 48 hours straight, and it stunk, and it had food everywhere, and people were. It was worth living through, and the way the maids would come by and they open the door, they look and they just close the door and walk off. They see all these oscilloscopes and digital stuff and everything all over the place. They knew it probably wasn't rock and roll. They didn't know what we were. They didn't want to know what was going on. They saw this big mess. But anyhow, on the I think it was the third day of the show. I don't think it was the second day. Third day of the show, we walked in with the digital mixer that actually worked. The faders would go up and down. We could pass audio through it. It looked like a functioning mixer, even though it was basically only semi-working. But DSP was working. It was programmed to work. It did a lot of the things it was supposed to do, like 10% or so. Yeah. But we did it. We pulled it off. That was it was a good time to be able to set down a goal that was really not realistic. But the people involved with it wanted to do it so bad. We pulled it off, and we did the impossible. Peter Watts was the engineering manager. And Peter pointed out that if we had put together a schedule for that, it'd be impossible. If you schedule out all the things you have to do to make that happen, it would have been impossible. But because everybody wanted to do it so bad, we forced it to happen. Once we got that done, we came back, then things slowed way down. It was a very complicated, very, very complicated product. And you take a company like this that had little digital knowledge or experience, and we went from the Thanksgiving, it was 2 years we were actually in production of the product. And actually 2 years to go from zero to a functioning, sellable digital product in 2 years is very, very fast. Even though we felt it was very slow, and we were really looked at as being slow, but 2 years is light speed fast for any company to do a digital product as massive as that product was. It was difficult. It was expensive. It's been expensive ever since. Digital products are expensive. The little analog mixer is much easier to make money on a little analog mixer than developing a digital big product and hoping that technology won't change so fast that you can't make money off it. You can't pay it off before you have to redesign it.
Has the Light Bus been a successful product for you?
It's been, it's never been a huge market. We sold, I don't know how many we've got, got 8,000 of them out there, something like that. There's a lot of them out there. Do we sell 1,000 a month? No, it's not that kind of a market, but it's certainly paid for itself. We certainly had our growing pains and engineering pains and software issues in the beginning because the first issue wasn't quite ready. It took a while to get the software worked out, so it was less buggy. But I'm glad we did it. If we hadn't done it, we wouldn't have a lot of the digital technology we have today. So, from the point of view of paying for its investment, it's absolutely been a successful product.
Greg, a question: how do you explain that even though Petey the Chihuahua's been dead for 2 years, as late as today, you can still find little puddles of urine out by the front door?
I think you're right. But you had a question.
Well, it was similar to that. I was just curious about, if you had any interesting stories about the first interface between digital engineers and analog engineers, knowing that that can be interesting. But it sounds like under the duress in which this was done, there wasn't any time.
Nobody had time to, there wasn't, it wasn't like anybody's minds. There wasn't enough time to do that. Everybody's fully engaged. But it was a difficult product. Putting analog together and digital together and all the software for a group that hadn't done it before, as a combination, was a big project.
Dave?
I think everybody probably can hear me, but anyway. Oh, I see. Okay, yes.
For the record.
Yeah, this is for the record too. You've shown us a lot about how quickly you've moved, and of course, it begs the question: where do you see yourself, say, in another 10 years? Where do you see Mackie in another 10 years?
Well, the hope is we keep on growing, become profitable and more profitable.
Specifically in product.
In product, power process speakers has been a real successful part of the company. I think there's a lot more growth we can have in that area. Contractor, the sound contractor area in particular for the company is one that we've put time and energy into in the past few years, and it's still a very, very small part of the company. That's probably, in my view, that's probably the single biggest growth area for the company if we handle it right. Because it also takes the technology that EAW has, RCF has, and what we've gained from digital audio for the MI and pro recording part. All those can be combined to be used to do products for a contractor. So I see that being the biggest area of growth. 10 years, our goal has been, our goal was to be $1 billion company in 10 years. That's a pretty big goal. Is it realistic? I don't know. I'm more concerned about doing the right product for the market and growing profitably and being a good company. You're rewarded by the market by doing good products. You're not going to be rewarded by willing it to happen. You're only going to be a successful company if you do the things that the market, desires. You earn the vote by people vote with their wallet. So as we do better and better products, more innovative products, the company can grow if we do those things right.
So Greg, is this your last job, or when do you start your next company?
I mean, how would I ever top this one?
You've had success making mixers. You've had success making digital mixers in making products and designing products and developing products. What is the role of the functional prototype? Has the transition to using digital stuff changed the timing and importance and role of that functional breadboard? You fiddle with it, it's running, but you're still going to change it prototype.
I think I missed it.
When you're doing digital, it's math, it's defined, the specs are locked, the digital part's done and is unchanged? Or is it just as fiddle and twiddle as breadboard analog?
What you do on digital, if you do it right, I'm not an engineer, okay? But what you do, what you want, here's the advantage of digital. The advantage of digital is if you make a mix engine, if you make the DSP, if you make that box flexible enough and powerful enough, it becomes the engine that operates the product. So you've got a control surface you can define any way you want to. You've got a box that's powerful enough. You have an I/O box. The advantage of digital is you've got the flexibility to make it be anything you want it to be. You can change the software. It's only software, but you can change the software for the product to be whatever it wants to be. So, if the product's going to have to change as the market changes. The digital product, the advantage you have in software is to be able to change it at will with software without twiddling with it. With analog, if you want to change an analog mixer, it's tear it up and redo the whole product. So, I personally see a lot of advantages in digital from the point of view of designing. But it is a matter of, from day one, looking forward 5 years or so, or say 3 years, and saying, where do you want to be with a line of products? And when you design that mix engine, the DSP package, that whole thing, to say, where's it going to be 3 years from now, spec-in the kind of chips that you'd have 3 years from now, that are expensive now but won't be expensive next year or 2 years later, and have that available.
Once you've got running code, do you test a prototype? Do you fiddle and then rethink specs?
I don't do code. The people who do a lot of the code right now is Acme Labs up in Victoria. And they do testing, code testing, as they build code, they test it. So it's not a matter of doing a bunch of code and then testing it. So they test as they go. But the spec, if you don't spec the product, if you want a product to be successful, you want a product to come out on time, the first thing is you've got to spec the product properly. It's got to be described. If you get into the point where you're starting to change the spec of the product as you develop it, because sales wants it or because I want it or whatever. If you start changing that, then the product will take longer to develop and it'll cost a lot of money and it'll probably come out as a poor product. So you have to force yourself to be able to spec the product. You spend more time in the front end speccing it, then the rest of it goes faster. I mean, a bunch of us in this room have seen this show a number of times. You know?
Got the scars. Somebody else?
Mind taking a moment to talk about stock prices and dividends?
Probably not.
Oh, okay.
I forgot to mention that Greg reserves the right to say no.
All right, thanks.
Mike had a question.
This is about those stock prices.
I don't know if this is exactly a softball, but if you're going to mix something, you're going to record something, since you've been involved in both analog and digital, what would be your preference? Analog or digital?
Can I duck here?
I figured.
I bought, I think it was the first Sony F1 in the country. Rick saw it.
Yeah.
And I got it from our a parts supplier in Japan. Had it shipped over.
Were Japanese.
Yeah, it was all Japanese. The day I got it, Audio Magazine came out with a review on the product. And the front cover had a picture, close-up picture of it. So I cut up the magazine, glued it to the product so I could tell what the things were. At iControl, we had a little recording studio. We had some custom-made speakers. A guy named Milan Nastrovic, a very fine speaker engineer. Ribbon tweeters, very good speaker. We had 2 of those. I play percussion, enough to bore myself, but I play percussion. I have for a long time. And we had a drum set there with real nice Zildjian cymbals and the whole thing, and 414 microphones. And I did some recording through the mics through a Tapco mixer that was a medium, C12, okay mixer, and into the F1 digital mixer or digital recorder. And I went and listened to it on the speakers, and it was the first time I'd ever heard drum sound, cymbals, and all sound real. So I bought it in digital from day one. But you can't record digital at plus 40 like everybody tries to do. Everybody's trying to record digital at, they want bit depth, which is just BS. You want to have dynamic range and don't record so hot. I believe the reason digital sound, one of the big reasons digital sounds so bad for a lot of years is people are recording way too hot. If you have a transient you want to record, you've got to record at minus 10 or 15 or 20. So from my point of view, I think digital is just fine if you use it right. If you're trying to get a sound effect, recording a rock and roll band, you want to squish tape, then that's totally different. You can get a multi-track recorder, squish tape, compress it for that sound. That makes total sense. But you can also do that after you record digitally. You can run it through an analog recorder and get that sound that way afterwards. So I very much like digital.
You can always add distortion.
Yeah.
Is there any particular product that you have worked on that's sort of closest to your heart?
Well, 1604 because otherwise I'd be broke. But there's a few of them. The HRA24, this guy here, is one that all of us sweated blood over. It's a speaker that all of us wanted. I mean, forget if it's commercially successful. I forget that. What we wanted was, our goal was to design a really, really accurate, affordable speaker. And yeah, we got allowed. So those are one of the ones that were the most fun to me, because I wanted a lot of the products that we've done are products I wanted personally. I'll just be honest. So a lot of the products I'm involved in are products that I just wanted myself. So I kind of forced everybody to do it my way because I wanted the products. I didn't always win, but a number of times. So that was one I like in particular. The SRM450, the molded speaker in the middle, was one, again, that there was a huge amount of design that went into it. It's been commercially very, very successful. It sounds really good if you use right, or even if you use wrong, but it sounds really good, it's compact. It's one that came out better than I would ever have hoped. Oh, what else? Yeah, D8B, a lot of the products, but I think the speaker products are the ones because they're more.
You've always had a thing about speakers.
I like speakers. Yeah, well, speakers are a disease. Once you play with speakers, once you're bit with the speaker bite, whatever, it's done. You're a speaker person.
Yeah, I remember seeing speakers with chopsticks on the cones, and Rubber, goopy secret sauce on the surrounds, all that stuff. Tweeters
Yeah.
with toothpicks.
The first big speaker I ever bought was Electro Voice 30W, which is a 30-inch woofer. Before I met Rick Chinn. That was my first bass guitar speaker. It was a terrible speaker, but it sure was big.
If you go to the trade shows, and I don't know if Telex lets them do it anymore, but EV used to have some tables that were used in their sales area that were made out of 30Ws. And they turned them upside down, basket, like that, and they put a round plexiglass top on it, about probably 3 feet diameter, and they mounted it on like a cocktail table stand.
It was a 30-inch woofer with a 2.5-inch voice coil.
Yeah, and a cone made out of that white styrofoam coffee cup material.
Quarter-inch. But there's a few products in particular, but it's the speakers. Yeah, we ended up. It ended up being sold to a bass guitar player who blew it up. Then we bought it back from him, took the frame and sent the frame down to a company in Portland that reconed speakers back then. We kept the cone. We put it back in this 14 cubic foot big wood box. We stapled the outside surround to the box and put it in front of the Tapco house, and we painted wolf on the front cone in fluorescent green. And then one day we woke up and somebody had stolen the box, and I assumed that somebody thought they got a real speaker.
You mentioned you're not, or the software for the Digital 8 bus now is done by an outside company. Is that the case?
The original software was done. It's always been done in house.
Right.
The company in Vancouver we own, Acme Labs, is one of our acquisitions. A group of about 8 guys, brilliant designers, fine people, and they took over. A number of our digital people left the company, and it was taken up by Acme Labs.
So they're working on new. I mean, you're at version 3 now for the Digital 8 bus.
5.
5? Oh, wow. I have to download the.
Well, it was going to be 4, but they've done a huge amount of work on it, and I thought it was already out, but.
You don't know. I'm still an analog guy.
Yeah.
I know you got a lot of experience with hands-on, and I'm kind of curious how you deal with the software aspect of design, because designing a piece of software is radically different than designing hardware. So I know the GUI and the interface is important, obviously, but as far as the architecture and how do you work with your designers in that fashion?
The answer is I don't work on that at all. I work on the GUI for as the video part of it. To me, it's the same thing as a control panel. I mean, I hate software that you look at it and you can't figure it out, which is lots of software. I think there's a lot of software engineers that just designing user interfaces for human beings is an art all by itself. And there's a lot of people, most people are very poor at that. And a lot of people who are engineers are particularly bad about it because they're too close to it. If you know what it is too much or too close to it, you're the wrong person to critique whether the product's going to be easy to use by somebody else because you know it too much. So my view, my view of that is the control surface, whether it's a screen and software, whether it's a hardware surface, is the same thing. You've got to go after it with a lot of time and energy and really critique it and really go through it and spin it a number of times until it makes sense to somebody besides the software designer.
Right. So it sounds like what Microsoft does. They have their own HIT lab, human interface technology, and so it sounds like you're the HIT lab or you have a lot of input to that. And you just say, if this doesn't look right to you as a user, you don't want it in there, right? And then you make some suggestions and go back and force them to design it.
Well, I'm not really a software geek. So
I'm talking about the user aspect of it.
Because I'm not I use computers a fair amount, but I'm not a real computer guy.
Right.
I don't have much. I won't put up with stuff that's really hard to use. I just won't use it.
Right. That makes sense.
My tolerance from having to use products that are hard to use is very, very low.
It's like bad VCRs.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I think
No, I've
VCR
never
is the
programmed a
ultimate
VCR.
example of bad programming.
Yeah.
Although we bought a new oven at home for our kitchen, and it's right up there. It's right up there. Yeah. And funny thing, it was made in the United States, too. I guess it's not limited to just Japan. Somebody else?
Yeah, and speaking of the D8B when it first came out, wasn't quite ready. Can you talk a little bit about the SDR?
Oh boy, there's not much I can really say. I'm not trying to avoid the question that I haven't been really involved with their products. I'm not sure. I know it came out a little bit premature and had some software glitches that's being worked on now or being fixed.
Right. We're users of the HDR, really love that product, and we're looking at another 24 tracks, and had actually looked into the SDR, and we're actually pretty disappointed because a lot of the features just weren't implemented yet, and the incompatibility with the media. We thought we were looking at a system that you could just take a hard drive out and stick in the other machine.
And the goal is that SDR and HDR work together. You should be able to pull a drive out of the HDR into the SDR. It should function. You can't edit with SDR very much, obviously, but they should be compatible. And that's always been the goal. I'm not sure where we're at with that right now. I'm not working on that product, so I really can't answer. But I know there were some glitches with that. It's quiet.
Yeah, you mentioned I think maybe 18% profitability, and I guess as a hardware company that I wanted to, I don't know much about the financial side of things, but I was curious if you could talk about what are the expectations in the industry, what do other companies do, and also within Mackie, is the profitability different on the old analog stuff or the old school analog stuff or the newer digital?
I'll talk historically. So right now, the company right now has gotten so big and so spread out that it's hard to even talk about what a gross profit is. Or in that historically, when I said TAPCO did 18% net profit before tax is very good for a manufacturer. A manufacturer, if you can make industry average in America, it used to be about 5% net profit before tax. That's a decent net profit. So if you're making 18%, that's quite good. The software industry would typically make a much higher percentage because that's just the industry that's the difference. But manufacturing, if you get 18% software, 10% would be a very good goal to have, where you've got enough money you're putting into engineering. You can change the net profit by reinvest money. So 10% is definitely a very good goal. But 18 was very good for TAPCO. I controlled that for a while. This company had over 18% for about 3 or 4 years. But that was during a period of time where we had little competition. It was a simple company. The company was very very focused at making only a few products. So it was a period of time where we really had a chance to make unusually higher profit. But that it was difficult to keep that going in a manufacturing product company because at some time you have to start not only redesigning your old products because they become old, you have to redesign new products. So all of a sudden you've got the cost of designing new products plus the old ones that are starting to die off. So that happens, plus the company gets more profitable, and plus a lot of companies get sloppy over time. It's difficult for most any company to keep the profit up because as you make some money, you tend to be a little bit sloppier. And it's just difficult to act like you don't have any money when you do have some money to work with.
We're going to pause for the tape. No? This is it. Okay. So, more questions? Jack.
So, Greg, what's your day-to-day life now that it's a multinational company, and what do you focus on? What do you spend your time doing?
I'm working mostly on product concepts. I'm working on new digital interfaces. Looking forward in this company for new products, digital products, compact products, a lot of products. And so I'm spending my time looking at product concepts, which is really my favorite thing to look at. I spend a fair amount of time on board-related issues also. That's not as fun as new product stuff.
Any sneak previews for the next year or two?
No.
Oh, you've learned. Don't pre-announce. I can remember lots of fire drills caused by products being pre-announced.
Is there any effort by Mackie to work on making the project studio? And studio is generally easier to wire up using digital stuff. So not necessarily FireWire or MLAN, which are somewhat compromised by their video orientation and lack of clocks and stuff. But a similar technology as cheap could be made by an audio company that wants to send lots of independent streams of audio around, transport control and gesture. And so the only time you need wires are from a mic or from a legacy analog source, and everything else can be a single wire, that moves all your stuff around. That's a dream, right?
I want that too.
Are you more comfortable mixing with a mouse, or are you the kind of guy that likes faders in front of you?
Currently, our latest digital products are merely mouse substitutes, effectively. There's always going to be that user interface, and it's interesting. Like when I was with Clark Technic, we were dealing with looking at all these digital products, going, "Oh my God, are we going to have jobs in another few years because everyone's using digital equalizers and plugins?" But look at the plugin market now. There are plugins for Pultec EQs that were designed in the 50s. And so really, what the digital market's doing is it's just making, instead of proprietary electronic circuits, it's proprietary algorithms. And to some extent, what we're doing now with the control surfaces is what Greg did back years ago. It's not, anybody can buy moving faders and put them in boxes and hook them up to computers, but it's delivering the feature set that customers want at a certain price point that hits home with people. And there are a lot of control boxes on the market, and Mackie Control and the predecessor to that, Logic Control that we did with eMagic, has been tremendously successful. It's just the right feature set at the right price. And yet all it is basically a bunch of knobs and some software to control somebody else's software on the computer. So more and more it's really going to be, the real win is the user interface. In digital live consoles, the PM1D from Yamaha is very popular at the high end because the interface makes a lot of sense. They work with a lot of live people developing that. And more, those are the consoles and products that are going to be successful, the people who get the interface right, not so much the people with the highest technology or the best technology.
Back to the analog world for a second. Mackie, and I guess your personal thing has always been high value, high quality, low-ish price. And you've been obviously real successful at that, but you haven't, people still sell, for example, like live analog consoles for more money than you sell an SR-24 or something. So do you ever look into expanding towards the high end, or will you always be real high value and still high quality oriented?
Yeah, the analog, we look at expanding upwards somewhat, but we're now looking at expanding to high-end analog, because high-end analog is very expensive to make, different manufacturing process, and it's not the future. The digital is by far a better way for us to go. But anyway, certainly if you go up market somewhat in analog, and have, in fact, have looked at that, and they're working on a number of products that are up market from what we covered now. You an analog guy?
Yeah, I guess so. Well, especially since I'm a live guy, I guess. Digital has not made the same kind of impact that it has in the world of the studio, for sure.
Would you like a digital live board?
I think my back would like it. But nobody's really come out with.
What's your biggest concern about a digital live board?
Just that the interface is not fast enough to get around on, and I haven't seen a PM1D in person. I haven't seen an Novacin in person, but clicking through menus is not what you want to be doing when something's feeding back or whatever. So I guess maybe that's sort of, maybe the user needs to adapt to the future instead of the digital interface adapting to what the analog users want. But you guys have anything to say?
I share your concern. I think everybody does.
Well, how about the inherent stability of digital too, being, analog always, I think, feels safer in that realm. You don't want your software set up to crash or lock up. Or
I'm not afraid of digital. I'm afraid of having a computer with a hard drive running in a system, but a system that's purpose-built as a digital product. I'm not worried about it.
Embedded, hard, non-mechanical type stuff.
Yeah.
I have a question about, in hi-fi with companies like Krell and Lin and Rega, they spend a lot of money on the actual sound, do little listening tests, and a lot of engineering money is spent on actually getting it to sound really, really good. And then you have on the other end with like Circuit City, where you have a 300 receiver that the sound really is tapered off a little while ago, and just packing features. Do you guys spend a lot of time on actually doing listening tests, and has it changed? Actually getting your sound quality? Has it tapered off and you guys are just kind of working on features now? Or do you really pay attention to sound quality? I know you guys advertise your mic pre's a lot and how good they sound. I'm just wondering how it's changed over the last 20 years.
On the monitor speakers, we spent a huge amount of time listening to it. The live sound, if you look at EAW, the folks at EAW spent a huge amount of time listening to the product. On the hi-fi, so these studio monitors are supposed to be hi-fi, but in hi-fi is not necessarily hi-fi. It could be warm sounding or dull sounding or whatever your taste might be. That's not my cup of tea, but that's what some people obviously like. My view is accuracy. The studio monitor should be accurate. Flat on axis, flat off axis, flat engine response, low distortions, etc. And you have to spend a lot of time listening to make sure it sounds right. We spent a huge amount of time listening to these guys to make sure they sound as good as we, and hope they sound as good as we thought they did. We did listening where we have a person in the studio with a live instrument through a speaker, live with no recording at all to verify. We did a lot of A/B tests with other speakers, but it's not the same as sitting there with your crackers and wine and listening to the speaker wire that's longer or shorter. It's not like, it's not to that point.
You managed to get the speaker wire really, really short. No.
Right. The sound quality is very, very important. The speakers, the two things that matter the most is the microphone and the speaker. And so when we develop studio monitors, the sound quality, that's very, very important to us. So it may not be the same deal as a hi-fi company that listens to it to the point where it's a religion, but we listen to it from a point of view almost like religion that is accurate. We want to have this when we play back a recording of a live instrument that sounds, it's startlingly real. What a speaker should be is real. It shouldn't sound like the speaker, it should sound like the instrument. So we take it seriously.
You gonna make a microphone?
Huh?
Ever gonna make a microphone?
I said I was never going to make a mixer again.
Okay. Just plug it in.
Condenser microphone for $29? You can buy a studio mic for $39 now, I think.
Didn't you also say you were never going to make an amplifier?
Should have told me advice. Yeah, probably.
When you started building products, it seems like you made something, like the first half-tone mixer was in, it was maybe feeling like a vacuum, it was in a great niche. How has your focus changed with the steady advent of competition in your world?
It's certainly more difficult. You look at something like Behringer, you're making products for a third the price that are reasonable quality. You just have to keep looking for the niche. There's always a niche. There's always a business opportunity. But it's making it smaller, more compact, lighter, more features, better looking, better operation. There's always something you can do better than the competition to look at. But it's tougher. It's not like you walk into the market and it's like we started TAPCO. most mixers have to offer was, make a good mixer, you'll sell a bunch of mixers. It's not as easy as it used to be, but there's always markets to go after. Our power process speakers, we went after that market, being a company that didn't make speakers. So it allowed us to go after the market with power process. Where the competitors made passive speakers, they couldn't stop making passive because it would hurt their business. We were able to go after those competitors with active speakers effectively because they couldn't not make passive speakers. As an example of what we can do. So it's more difficult, you got to be more clever. There's always a way to make a better product.
Last call. One last question. Who's going to ask it? Vince?
This is actually a segue. This is actually a segue to the last question, which is I know that you've always had a philosophy of vertical integration with your business, where you do it as much as possible to control all aspects of the product. And in today's manufacturing world, that's a really difficult thing to do, and keep costs down because a lot of people export the jobs overseas and things like that. So I was curious, do you see the business structure changing, or do you always want to do vertical integration, or do you think you'll be shopping things out contracting things out that would still provide the value, but not incur the cost?
Vertical integration for us was necessary, and I'm glad we did it. When we did it, we got to automatic stuffing machines for our circuit boards early on. Fortunately, we wouldn't have been able to compete. We did our own metal shop and paint shop because the paint shops around here could not keep up with us. We had 7 paint shops with different quality of paints. So the growth of this company in the first 6 years was so rapid that the vertical integration really served us well. I mean, going forward, vertical integration is going to become less effective because manufacturing, in particular Asian manufacturing, whether it's components or modules or metal work or whatever is more cost effective than doing it in the States. Unfortunately, that's the reality. So the business model for vertical integration in America, unless you're huge, unless you're a car company, is becoming less favorable, and that's been changing for the past 10 years really. So for our growth, what we needed, it was a good thing for us to do in the past. But going forward, being vertically integrated is the wrong direction. You really want to put your money into product development and the rest of it. You really don't want to spend all your money in machinery to manufacture when other companies can manufacture parts for you for less money at a higher quality.
Right, you don't want a commodity business, you want to add innovation and be on the higher.
Yeah. There's a million companies that can stuff circuit boards.
Right.
And that's what they're good at. So why have part of your, a tenth of your business focused at circuit board assembly as an example, when you've got companies that do it 100%, and do a better job than you could ever do, and they do it more effectively because they're running that machinery off over bigger runs of circuit board production.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. Should we do this again with somebody else?